Good afternoon and welcome to AM News Network presents Summary Judgment. I'm attorney Rachel Baird. Seated next to me is Ed Peruta, president of American News and Information Services. We're doing our weekly show, commenting on local events, national events, and anything else that comes to mind.
From the American News Media Center in Central Connecticut, we may be small, but we talk big.
I did forget about that. Speaking of being small but talking big, a pretty monumental decision came out from the Supreme Court on April 1st, Thursday, about a decision made by the Federal Communications Commission to do away with some limitations on one entity owning a certain number of radio, broadcast, or newspaper outlets in a single market. And we're going to talk about that and what effect it might have, whether the FCC has simply given up on promoting competition and diversity in local stations because all the mainstream stations say the same thing anyway. So what difference does it really make if they all own everything? What difference does it make if the different entities that own different ones all say the same thing? So it could be a sign of that they've just given up. What do you have to talk about today, Ed? Or do you just want me to get started on this?
Well, there's a move on the current administration to address Second Amendment rights. Current administration in Washington. And there's all of this hoopla about firearms after the issue on January 6th in the Capitol. Well, unfortunately, my heart goes out to the Capitol police officer of 18 years who was killed by someone driving a car into his position. And the first thing that came to my mind is, you want to feel sorry and bad for the officers, which I do, but the first thing that goes through my head is, what are they going to do, take away our cars now?
Yeah, that's been a popular reaction, I know, in Connecticut since 2013 and 14 when a lot of new laws were put into place after Newtown. And, I don't know. It just kind of reminds me of something a kid might come back at you and say, yeah, you know what I mean? It kind of makes sense, but it doesn't.
This administration, the Biden administration, or should I say the Harris administration, is not addressing issues the way they were addressed when they were looking to take over the White House. They were complaining about certain things taking place, i.e., the number of unaccompanied minor migrants in the holding centers along the southern border. The Biden administration doesn't want anybody going and taking pictures.
And the news is not going to cover what's going on now that Biden's in office. They covered it when Trump was in office to make him look bad. But we're not going to hear anything bad about President Biden for 4 years, and it's going to seem like he's doing a great job. And there's not going to be a whole lot of information out there to argue with that. That's the problem. We're not going to get the news.
CNN, which used to be my favorite 24/7 news organization.
It was the first one, wasn't it?
It was. Ted Turner. Do you know how he got CNN?
Mm-mm.
He went to the FCC who you're talking about. He said, I want a license for a radio station. And the FCC said, he says, no, you're not going to get it. We're not going to give it to you. He said, okay. So he bought a World War II Liberty ship. And he went out 3 miles off the U.S. coast into international waters. Had a tower, I guess, on the Liberty ship. And started broadcasting from outside the territorial waters of the United States. Oh, come on in. We want to regulate you. Come on in. Come on in. Okay. CNN got started. Ted Turner. Now, I know that this is going to take some time, and I'm going to give you as much time as I can to talk about the FCC decision. Because I remember when they went the other way back in the 70s.
Wow, you got it right. That's exactly when the rules came up in the 70s.
Why don't we hear the president talking about, and again, I apologize, I'm getting this from Fox, okay? Police defunding. Major cities are feeling the loss of police funding as murders and other crimes soar. Why are we not hearing the president talking about this? Why aren't we hearing the vice president talk about this?
I mean, I've read things where the press conferences where Biden is present are just so much better now. They're so much more cordial, and there's no controversy. And I'm thinking, yeah, because the news reporters aren't making any controversy, and they're being cordial.
He's not picking on the people that'll ask him a tough question. Okay. But that's my opinion. That's what I think. Okay? Now, police officer gets killed in Washington, D.C., a Capitol police officer. And what do we have? Well, before we go to that, because I was talking about the southern border, okay? Shocking video of sisters dropped over a border wall fuels criticism of the immigration policy.
Well, what is the policy? I don't even know what the policy is.
Well, Trump said, you're not coming in. Don't come in. We're going to build a wall. Don't come in. Biden says, oh, come on. So now the smugglers, they have nighttime FLIR, forward-looking infrared, okay? You can see at night, night vision. They've got cameras that take pictures. And the smugglers on the Mexican side run up to the fence, get up to the top, and they're dropping 5- and 6-year-old kids over the 14-foot fence onto the other side. So now they're in the United States. I think it was 14. The thing is 14 feet. A shocking video of 2 girls dropped over a border barrier in New Mexico is fueling criticism of the Biden administration handling of the crisis at the southern border, with critics saying the administration is encouraging smugglers and illegal immigrants.
Even if
5- and 3-year-old girls.
Even if the policy hasn't changed since Biden took office, the way he ran on that issue sends a message and is encouraging
Okay.
it. No matter what change has been made or hasn't.
So now we have the incident at the Capitol where a vehicle by a single operator rams into the police and wounds one officer and kills another. Well, guess what? I think you ought to take the asshole out and shoot him. I think that if he's going to do that, we need a death penalty. I don't care what anybody says. I believe we need a death penalty. We need to end the shit once and for all. If you get convicted of doing it, and it's beyond, you can't have somebody in jail for 30 years and then say, oh, he didn't do it.
Well, you can, and that does happen. I think what you meant to say.
It does happen, but what I'm saying to you is there are certain things that happen that are not, you can't question whether or not it happened. And I don't want to hear about motive or anything. When somebody drives their car into a goddamn police barricade or police line and kills one officer and wounds another, death penalty, done, deal, done. Okay, now.
Never heard you talk like that.
So this happens. Okay, and then we have, and I talked about this way back when, the D.C. District of Columbia National Guard was deployed to the Capitol complex after a man rams a car into police officers. No National Guard members were injured, according to the Guard's press desk. Okay? The National Guard deployed, and now listen to this, immediate response force to the Capitol complex on Friday to support Capitol Police, which has lost at least one officer after the vehicle rammed into a security barrier. Now, do you know what that does to somebody like me? During the Tet Offensive, I was back in a tent in the rear area, and I was the reactionary force. I was in 2nd platoon. 1st platoon went into a village called Thanquit, south of Da Nang. And every village was a friendly village unless you took a KIA. In other words, if you got wounded, it's still a friendly village. But if somebody dies in that village, then it's considered a non-friendly village, and you can use anything you want to go into that village. Friendly village, you could only take in what you could carry. Unfriendly village, call in helicopter gunships, call in napalm, call in B-52 bombers, call anything you want and destroy that village. And trust me, we destroyed it. We leveled it. Okay? But that day we heard on the radio that there was a WIA, Wounded in Action, and a KIA, similar to this. And I was the, what did they call it?
The person that
reactionary
was
force.
Yep.
Okay? They called it the some immediate response force. Okay? At one time in my life, I got activated as a response force, and it was the beginning of the most horrendous 2 weeks of my life during the Tet Offensive. But that's neither here nor there. Okay? We're talking about the wrong shit.
Well, let's link up what you were just talking about with a theme that we've been talking about since all this happened. You had predicted back in January that the National Guard would become a permanent force, or a permanent presence at the Capitol, and you talked about how it looked like a green zone because there were barriers around it and fences and all this kind of thing. And you predicted that that would never change. It'll stay that way. And something like this that happens, obviously, is going to make people believe that that was the right decision. I don't know if it is or not, but that was the right decision to basically barricade our elected politicians.
In the early to mid 1980s, I was a government GS7 employee, and I was the OIC, officer in charge of the Ansonia, Connecticut National Guard Armory. In other words, when the captain comes in on the weekend, he's in charge. When the captain goes home for 28 days and he's not in the drill day, I'm in charge. So I had to know the combinations to the safe, the gun safe, the armory, all the keys to this, that, and nothing. But there was one thing, it was called the phone tree. And what happened was, if we got motivated or mobilized, I had to call 5 people. Those 5 people each had to call 5 people. Those people each called 5 people until everybody was called saying, come to the armory. Now, I saw photographs of the D.C. National Guard running down a hallway. Assuming that that video is correct, trust me, these guys didn't come from their houses to be the reactionary force. They were already with their equipment at the door, ready. You know, they're probably shooting pool, watching TV. But then all of a sudden, the bells go off, the equipment goes on, the field gear goes on, and they're running to the trucks to go to the scene. This is I don't care what anybody says, a military presence in the capital of the United States to protect the capital of the United States from individuals who want to do harm to our country, harm to our way of life, or harm to those people who may be abusing us and our rights. Now, there were reports initially, MSNBC, I believe, it's reported that MSNBC initially reported that it was a white male who ran into the guards. It wasn't a white male. It was a person of color who believes in Farrakhan and whatever.
Well, when you had mentioned why would somebody do that, that did cross my mind. It could be somebody who feels a vendetta towards law enforcement. You know, it's pretty easy to think of somebody that might do that, actually.
You know something? You're 100% right.
I'm not saying it's
but what
right.
I'm saying is,
Of course.
we are not paying attention to the right shit that's going on. Now, I know that every fucking day I pick up a newspaper or watch a television news program or read on the internet, coronavirus,
I know.
coronavirus,
Yeah.
The news media must be happy as shit because they've got something to fill their space, and it's given to them by the government regarding corona. In other words, an article about where they're getting shots this time, where they're getting shots this time. Stringer sent out a request to our Florida J.C. Playford. Okay, I get copies of them. They wanted him to go and shoot a vaccination clinic. Okay, they needed B-roll or footage of a vaccination clinic. Well, the government gave you that story, so we're going to send somebody out to cover it. There are stories that the media is not covering. You know, why aren't...
Everything's under the radar at this point, and it's not going to change because the next phase of this whole thing is going to be when everybody's vaccinated. All we're going to hear about is how people are getting back to work, look at how crowded the restaurants are, go out and shop and support the economy. That's all we're going to hear about is stuff like that.
Hold on.
We're not going to hear news.
I gotta tell you. I saw, and I get my news from mainstream media. I mean, I read the internet, and they had 900,000 new jobs. Biden's going to take credit for increasing the employment in the country. But he forgets, we're coming out where all those people are fucking laid off and not working, and they all come back to work or they all find jobs, and you sitting there saying, oh, we're doing a great job. Oh, look at all the people we put to work.
I think every president would do that, though.
No, but they're going to use it. They're going to take their political surfboard and they're going to surfboard on that story.
Right.
Okay? And they go, oh yeah, look at what we're doing for the economy. I don't know why the mainstream media does not have cameras and cameramen all along the southern border riding, doing ride-alongs with the Border Patrol, okay?
Well, who took that video of the two children being thrown over the fence?
They have towers that have cameras on them, and they're back in the center, and they can zoom in, and, you know, the cameras they have are much better.
But why would they provide that to the papers?
I don't know.
Yeah, it was probably somebody out there that happened to be there.
But I got to tell you, the Border Patrol agents, who are to me as important, if not more important, than the Capitol Police officers, okay? The Border Patrol officers trying to keep back the wave that's coming in without any direction or assistance or whatever from the federal government. Now you sit there and say, well, Texas, you take care of your border. New Mexico, Arizona, and California, you take care of your part of the border. And those towns along the border, you take care of your town if your town's on the border. But the federal government sits back like this. You know, President Biden is my president. I want him to act like my president. I want him to act like a president. I want him to get on his fucking jet, go down there and land at some airstrip by the border, go up into a tower and watch what's happening. Cover yourself with Secret Service, but go down there and look for yourself. Tell Kamala Harris, who's been charged with the issue of the southern border.
I did not know that.
Oh yeah, and it says that she hasn't had a press conference. She's been 2 weeks, 2 months, something like that. She hasn't held a press conference, anything about what's going on on the southern border. She comes from the state of California, but she lives in Northern California.
Well, Well, she was the U.S. No, the
She was
Attorney
Attorney
General for the
General
whole
for the state
state.
of California.
Right.
Yeah. What I'm saying to you is this. But basically, San Diego is run by Republicans. You know, oh yeah, you're on your own down there, buddy. You're on your own. But I've said enough. I know that we have to get into, you know.
I want you to tell everyone what fascinated you on the internet this week, and you told almost everybody about it. Everybody in your immediate circle,
All right.
I would say.
If you have a computer,
Well, I
I
think
want you
everybody
to
does.
go to Google. You can do it on your phone if
Of
you got a
course.
smartphone. Go to your phone and bring up. Matter of fact, I think that our master control could go to YouTube.
No, we're not going to do
Okay.
that.
Okay. Google whale kayak women. Just those 3 words. Whale contact or whale
Canoe?
women
Were they in a canoe?
kayak.
Kayak.
Kayak. Whale kayak women.
Yes.
Somebody sent it to me.
I mean, were the women okay?
So, I didn't read that in the article, but okay. So these people, I guess, went down there to get into their little plastic kayaks, paddle around, and watch the whales.
Mm-hmm.
And in the distance, there's one that's this here, that's close to you. And now there's a person taking the video, and then the next person has got their little canoe or their kayak, and they're sitting there. And then there's one further out, kind of in the middle of the water. And paddle, paddle, paddle. All of a sudden, this big black thing comes up out of the water with its mouth wide open and takes the kayak and the women. And goes back down. Now, I don't know whether the women fell out of the kayak.
That's pretty
I don't know,
brave
but-
to go in a kayak whale watching. I mean, that is pretty brave.
Yeah, and it was the big sperm whale. It was some kind of a big whale, not a little tiny whale.
Well, I think every whale's pretty
It
big.
wasn't a bottlenose whale, and it was like you see down at Mystic Aquarium, you know, little white ones that are nice and you can pet them on the head. Oh, this was a fucking whale. Came up, and so I called my son Mike, who had gone out into the Indian River. He bought 2 kayaks for $850, and one of them has a little trolling motor on the back, you know, so it can help you along. So he
Yeah.
holds on to his girlfriend's canoe, and his got the motor, and they're paddling all around. And he says, "Let's go into the mangroves, to the backwaters of the Indian River." And he goes back in there, and he said the water got real shallow, and it was real muddy. And all of a sudden, he was sitting there, kind of rubbing the bottom, and something took off.
Oh my God.
It was a fucking alligator right under his kayak. And I said, "Oh yeah, so you're going to jump out and go swimming? You're going to have your 10-year-old son jump out and go swimming? You're going to have your dog there, their dog's going to be jumping around? You got alligators.
Yeah.
You got alligators."
Yeah, I don't think people realize that, you know,
And
they
then-
can be gone in a minute
And
out in the wild.
then he has a conversation with his son, Maverick, about the dangers that you have to be aware of when you're swimming. He goes, "You know, there's sharks." Maverick says, "Nah." That day, at the Fort Pierce Inlet, which is down near where they were, because they left where the alligator was, and they drove down to Fort Pierce in St. Lucie County, and they launched down there, and they were spending the day. Down there, the guy hooked and brought in a 350-pound bull shark. Now, a 350-pound bull shark could probably take a good-sized bite out of me. And I'm sitting there saying, "Oh, yeah." So when he called this morning, I said, "Maverick, so when are you going to go swimming with the alligators again?" Grandpa wants to know. When are you going to swim with the sharks and the alligators? Oh, yeah, but you have to Google it. Whale kayak women. And it'll pop up.
Yeah, a lot of people probably already watched it, right?
What? There's someone in my life who says, "Yeah, it's all fake. It's all fake. It's fake. It's fake. They can do anything they want to do with it. That's fake." And so I Googled it. And all of these reputable news organizations were reporting it back in November of 20.
Yeah, but all they do is look at the video and believe it. How do they know it unless they were there?
I think they interviewed the women. There was an actual. I mean, I didn't get
Oh,
into
good.
it.
So it
but
sounds like they're alive.
somebody interviewed the women, They interviewed witnesses, okay? But maybe all of those people were part of the conspiracy.
So it's funny you mention that, because anybody that goes on Pet Finder or Adopt a Pet or any of these other sites, or rescue sites in particular, you see all these puppies on there and all the dogs are coming from the south, and you begin to think, how would I know whether somebody in Tennessee takes mutts and doesn't spay or neuter them and lets them have babies or puppies, and then they get on a transport and come up here where basically you're charged $500 to $700 for a rescue? Now, I'm not complaining about that because I think it costs a lot.
Could it be a business model?
Could it be a business model? And I have had that thought for a while. And then I began to hear that a lot of these videos on YouTube where stray dogs or a dog is being saved or something, the word is that a lot of these are staged. You know, I began to hear that. And then there is a news story that, you know, popped up on my feed, and I think it's a huge story, is that a petition went out from a group called Lady Freethinker. And the woman that runs it is really interesting. Her name is Nina Jackal, but it's animal rights, basically. Through a petition, and I don't know what else, she has gotten YouTube to ban videos of dogs in danger and being harmed in a lot of these fake rescue incidents. So she has managed to get YouTube to ban certain videos. And I don't know how you feel about that.
I don't know how you prove whether it was real or fake. I mean, YouTube can't have a police force going out and checking on everybody.
Well, there are a lot of them are pretty obvious because they're not even making pretend that it's real. They're saying, let's put this dog here and there's a snake here and let's just watch and see what happens when the snake comes up to the dog. You know, there's stuff like, I can't even imagine watching anything like that on the internet. But I don't know. I mean, YouTube can do what it wants.
The snake and the dog is no different. The whale was going to eat the women.
Yeah, but you know, humans put themselves in situations a lot like that, and so when something happens, you're like, well, it's terrible. But you know, for somebody to do that to an animal, so I thought of that when you brought that up, that situation.
Okay.
So
you're going to talk about FCC, so let me see if I can set this up for you.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's why I like this subject, because I know you've been dealing with it for 40 years, 50 years now.
Well, even back before this, okay, there was a rule about owning two newspapers in the same time. Go back even further than that. Ma Bell, AT&T, Mom Bell, okay, was told that it was a monopoly, it was too big, it had to be broken up. Okay? So they broke up the telephone company. Today, you'd never know it was broken up. And then they came up with newspapers and TV stations. And if you remember, WTIC is a radio station in Hartford, and WTIC is a television station in Hartford. But WTIC television did not come in until years after the radio station had to separate. You know, had to go off over here, and then they came up with a TV station, but you couldn't own both.
And this case talks about that. So it talks about three different roles, and you know, the Communications Act that has put these regulations in place dates back to 1934. But the rule, newspaper broadcast cross ownership rule, that's 1975, and that said that one entity cannot own a radio or TV station and a newspaper. In the same market. So if I own a radio station or a television station, then I can't own a newspaper. And then in 1970, there was a radio television cross ownership rule, and that said you're limited to the number of combined radio and TV stations in a single market. And then there was the local television ownership rule that went into effect in 1964, and that restricts the number of local TV stations that one entity may own. So when Clinton was in office in 1996, he foresaw, give him credit, but it was 1996 already, so maybe it wasn't that difficult to foresee, that television, radio stations, and newspapers would kind of be replaced in the future by live streaming, YouTube, other news sources.
Stop right there.
Mm-hmm.
The President of the United States would have been briefed
I know.
on
I know.
what the electronic internet was capable of.
Yeah.
And what the MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, Rochester Institute of Technology, Worcester Polytech, all of these brainiac schools were coming up with in what to do and what not to do and how to do it, okay? The President, the Department of Defense is probably funding it, but they know about it, and then the President gets briefed,
Mm-hmm.
and so Clinton would probably know, oh, you have no idea what's coming. You're going to have lightning speed internet instead of dial-up, okay? You're going to be able to watch movies on the internet at lightning speed because do you think...
And newspapers are going to go out of business.
Do you think that the military is limited to 5G? When they're in Las Vegas, sitting in a trailer with a monitor and a joystick, okay? And he's a former gamer that was hired by the military to sit there and fly the drones over Afghanistan. They're doing it through the military communication system or the satellite internet. They're on a computer and they're loading it up to a satellite, which is beaming it over to another satellite, which is beaming it to their drones, and it's going at lightning, almost real time. Okay? So stop and think. Because you said that, what the president knows ahead of time. So, having said that, and you know all the shit that's going on, Biden doesn't want Trump to get a security briefing as a former president. They don't want him to know what's going on. Because if Trump knows what's going on...
Why? By the way, why would he get one? I didn't even know about this.
Well, if you remember, Madeleine Albright used to be the Secretary of State.
Uh-huh.
Henry Kissinger used to be the Secretary of State. It was Trump who stopped them from getting security briefings.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think Henry Kissinger's well into dementia by now. He's still up in Kent, Connecticut. He wasn't a sharp knife 5 years ago when he went to a meeting in Kent. I mean, he shows up and everybody goes, that's Henry Kissinger. But if he opens his mouth, he's in trouble. Well, the president's got the same issue, but still.
So there are briefings
They wanted him to not receive any briefings anymore.
I don't know why he would, but if it's been a tradition and it's precedent, then it doesn't seem right that he wouldn't be briefed. But I don't see why any president who's out of office would be briefed anyway. So President Clinton, and I think what I meant was he foresaw it. Obviously, he had information brought to him, but he could have ignored it. He could have ignored it and not acted on it.
Well, Al Gore invented the internet, so he was probably advising President Clinton.
That's true. That could be true. He had Al Gore right by his side.
Yeah, and Al Gore invented the internet.
So they passed the Telecommunications Act of 1996, and basically what this said was the FCC needs to review its rules every 4 years. Because from 1934, I guess, to 1996, they hadn't changed the rules. But a lot had changed in society. These rules came into play in 64, 70, and 76, but they hadn't been changed in that period of time, I should say. And a lot happened between 1964 and 1996.
Well, I'm the old guy in the room. You know, I'm the old fart in the room. I remember watching TV go off the air at midnight and playing the national anthem and the flag waving.
Yep, I remember
And
that.
when it came back on in the morning, the first thing they did, play the national anthem and the flag waving on TV. You know, with all kinds of notices and, you know, this television station subscribed to the television code of professional ethics. If you show a crime on TV, you have to show the person getting caught and punished. There are all kinds of rules. Yeah. McCarthyism. You know, they went after the people who wrote stories and said you're trying to influence our minds.
So since I guess 2002, the FCC has been trying to change these three rules that we just discussed, and they always get shot down in the Third Circuit. The Third Circuit Court of Appeals covers Delaware, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania, and they can never get past any changes being made because the Third Circuit will always reverse them. And I guess it hasn't gone up to the Supreme Court until now. And so the issue did go up to the Supreme Court. And what the FCC had put in place after the 1996 law, they said, well, when we do this review every 4 years, we're going to consider competition in the market. We're going to consider localism. I guess that means getting local news, right?
Give me a piece of paper.
Yeah, here you go. Take that.
Yeah. No, the first one was
Competition.
Yeah.
Localism.
Yeah.
And viewpoint diversity. Those were the three factors they were going to take into consideration when they were considering changing a rule.
Right.
Okay, these are the things they wanted to promote.
Right.
These three things.
Oh, am I going to enjoy this one?
And bear in mind, the Telecommunications Act didn't tell them they had to do that. They came up with that on their own as their standard for change. And so in 2002, they already had started to want to change, right? But they've been shot down, and then in 2017, I don't know when they met around that time, but in 2017 they changed the rules, and they did away with the newspaper broadcast cross ownership rule in 1975. An entity can own a radio TV station and own a newspaper in a single market. That's what they said. It was okay to do that. They did away with the radio television cross ownership rule in 1970. So there's no limit on the combined radio and television stations you can own in a single market. Now, they didn't do away with the local television ownership rule from 1964. They have limited it to two. They've changed it from what they called the 8 voices test, and now it's limited to 2 top 4 local stations in a single market that you can have. Okay, so they did away with 2 rules completely, which is a big change, and the other one they modified substantially, which is a big change. Third Circuit said, you know what? We agree with this Prometheus radio project organization. Your decision was arbitrary and capricious, because that's the standard when an administrative agency makes a ruling. Was it arbitrary and capricious? And the Third Circuit said it was arbitrary and capricious because you did not consider viewpoint diversity, which is defined as one of the concepts under that is how it would affect the ownership of minority and females of radio stations, TV stations, and newspapers. That's viewpoint diversity. You want these 3 communications, television, radio, and newspaper owned by people who are diverse, minorities, and women. And you need to consider that when you're changing any rule. And the Third Circuit said, FCC, you didn't consider that enough. You said you considered it, and you said that the change would not affect minority and women, female ownership of these things. And so we're going to send it back down for you to consider that and tell us what.
Right.
What do you think the Supreme Court said?
Well, you tell me. It just came out the other day.
Okay. It was a unanimous opinion written by Justice Kavanaugh,
Yeah.
new justice. saying, reversing the Third Circuit and saying that the FCC's decisions were not arbitrary and capricious. And so now we have done away with those two rules and changed the other rule. And do you know what Justice Thomas said in his concurring opinion? He agreed with Justice Kavanaugh and the other justices. But Justice Thomas had an interesting point. He said, you know what? The FCC is the one that came up with these standards, diversity, viewpoint, localism, competition. That's not written in the law. So even if they had ignored it under this circumstance, they didn't violate the law. Maybe they violated their own standard, but that's up to them if they want to violate their own standard. So not only am I not buying that there wasn't evidence in the record, I'm saying that they didn't even need to consider that at all. So I thought that was pretty interesting.
Okay.
I thought it was interesting that it was unanimous opinion.
I love it. So the FCC had said competition.
Yep.
I want you to know that
we want to promote competition.
Technically, we on YouTube or Facebook are competition.
Yep.
To get people to watch our shows.
And what
News Now Houston, News Now San Diego, News Now wherever you are, okay? Wherever you are, whoever you are, with a News Now whatever, okay, is competition to the mainstream media. Because we may hear things and find out things that the mainstream media says, that's nothing, okay? J.C. Playford is competition to a mainstream television station. Now, I'll give you an example. In my heyday of shooting breaking news, fires, accidents, homicides, what I called unassignable assignments. The television assignment editor comes in the morning, and they have a grease board behind the news desk. And they say, okay, Miss Baird, you're going to take a camera. You're going to go cover the camel races in northwestern Connecticut. Master Control, you're going to take a cameraman. You're going to go do the vaccines being given in East Hartford. So they assign everybody. They're assigning people. You can't assign somebody to cover a homicide. You can't assign somebody to cover a head-on crash on the highway. Because you don't know it's going to happen, right?
Well, couldn't you say to somebody, the next homicide that comes up, it's yours? Be ready.
But what happens is, and I've had this happen, they're all in the middle of a news conference, a sporting event. They're covering it, okay?
Right.
And they've got nobody to send to the breaking news.
Yeah.
So people like me, Kenny Kalos, Frank Papa, the rest of us that formed a group, okay, we were all over the state shooting everything. And it got so bad that the broadcasting engineers and technicians, the union at WFSB Channel 3 in Hartford, Connecticut, negotiated with the CBS affiliate here in Connecticut, okay, that they would not buy any footage from anyone other than their reporter. They would take no footage for compensation. So in other words, if we want to give it to them, that's fine. But they didn't want us paying. You know why? Some of us were making more money per month than a cameraman working at Channel 3. But we were hustling our ass off, okay? And I'll just tell you this story. Fox 61 was starting a news operation in the late 80s, early 90s in Hartford, Connecticut. D. Wagner was working a desk, and I can't remember the name of the news director, but he was some big shot that came from CBS, okay? Vince Burke. And D. Wagner was working a desk. And there was a guy who shot news down along the Connecticut coast, John Mangillo. And they were paying John Mangillo $75 for every clip that he sent up to Hartford to Fox 61. When I walked in to talk to Vin Burke, he said to me, yeah, we'll give you $15 for your clip, $10 for your tip, and if we send you on an assignment, we'll pay you $25. Now, the current news director at Fox 61, he was a Cub then, they would send me up to Yukon to spray a soccer game. And then he would use my footage as B-roll. But they'd send me up there to do it. There was an explosion in Torrington of a fireworks explosion in Torrington.
Yep.
And they called me in Rocky Hill and wanted me to drive all the way up to Litchfield County to shoot the fireworks and go to the hospital and stand outside the emergency room. And I said, wait a minute, I have to drive right by your TV station to go there. You're closer than I am, why don't you go? And there was a guy, Nico. They had a cameraman named Nico. He was the night guy. And they said, well, we're not going to send Nico up there. When the Perfect Storm swordfish boat sank in the Atlantic, they wanted me to go to Cape Cod to pick up video that was coming in off of a boat and drive it back to Hartford. Okay? And I said, you're paying all my expenses on this? They said, absolutely. So what I did was I called down to Goodspeed Airport in Haddam, Connecticut. I said to the owner and the instructor, I said, look, I need some right seat dual time for my pilot's license. I want to rent the plane. So I rented the plane, flew over to Cape Cod, picked up the video, flew back to there and drove it into Hartford and gave it to the news desk. And they said, how the hell did you do that so fast? He says, you're paying for the plane. I said, you can't expect me to do this, but here's what happened. The first month that they were on the air, first month, I made $1,800 billing Channel 61. Ladies and gentlemen behind the cameras, that was $10, $15, and $25 a pop.
Well, and the plane ride.
No. That was later on. That was later on. I went in one time to try and program their police scanner at the desk. They told me, hands off, hands off. And I said, okay, no problem. And they had a fax machine, but their fax machine was down in the finance department. There was a wreck on I-84. The state police sent me a fax because I was on their list. I-84 is closed, major oil tanker wreck, I-84 westbound, Cheshire. So I called up Fox 61. They didn't know about it. So I drove out there, I shot the video, I brought it in. They didn't want to pay me. They said, wait a minute. We found out about that. I said, you didn't know about it before I told you. Because you don't go down and check your goddamn fax machine. You put your fax machine at the news desk. I have had experience after experience, but I'm telling you, we are competition to the mainstream media. Now, you know what I've figured out? Because we're rebuilding and doing the website. And I want to explain to people that what we do really is we offer our editorial opinions about things that take place in the world, in the country, in the state, in the town.
Pretty much what everybody
But
does.
like sitting at a kitchen table at night talking about shit. Okay? Now the other one was localism. I have said all of my adult life, why, when I turn on WFSB Channel 3, we're everywhere, news at 6, okay? The first 15 minutes of the fucking news show is a story out of New York, a story out of Los Angeles, a story out of Washington, D.C., a story out of Miami, that I'm going to see the exact same fucking story when I turn on CBS at 6:30. I'm going to see it on the 6:30 news. Why are you telling me on the 6 o'clock news or the 5 o'clock news? Why are you telling me? Why are you telling me this?
Do you remember there was a period of time, I think it may have been in the 90s or whatever, local news, you turn it on, it was really a crime report. It was like, this person was murdered, there was a break-in here.
If it bleeds, it leads.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it depended where you lived, but in a lot of places it was a crime report.
A black getting shot in the city of Hartford in the North End is not news anymore.
Not on the local news.
One black getting shot in Chicago is not news anymore.
Right.
When 10 get shot, then it makes the news. When multiple people get shot, then it makes the news. But individual homicides, whether it's with an axe, a sledgehammer, an iron pipe, a knife, whatever, it's not news.
It used to be.
It used to be. No, you know what's news? 500 people got their shots at Rensselaer Field, their vaccinations today. Okay? Now, localism. It used to be the Hartford Courant had reporters, and those reporters, like, you're going to cover Wethersfield, I'm going to cover Rocky Hill. They used to come to the town council meeting, and they listen to the public interact with their elected officials, and then they would go up to the person who brought the issue to the town, and they'd ask him for his opinion, and they'd do a story on it the next day. Well, and it was called, the Hartford Times had what's they called the River South, it was the current, the River South edition, and it was for those communities south of Hartford along the Connecticut River, and you bought your newspaper, because the same newspaper that I get, the paper I get, is not the paper that Greenwich gets. The first newspapers that roll off the printing presses go to the farthest points in Connecticut. And then as they're doing it, they may be updating the paper, and so when you get back to Hartford, you've got a news article that, because it didn't make the press in time, Greenwich didn't know about, but Hartford did.
Correct. This is old times, but anyway. Yeah.
It is old times, but guess what? People used to buy fucking newspapers.
Oh yeah.
To read what happened.
It used to be a big deal when you got a letter to the editor in the paper.
I mean, absolutely.
Yeah.
I sent one from Vietnam and it got published, and I didn't even sign my name. They tracked me down. But okay, the other one is viewpoint diversity. Trust me when I tell you, Biden is throttling the shit out of viewpoint diversity. He doesn't want to hear shit from a politically right-leaning news organization. He doesn't want any questions from that side of the issue. Okay, that side of the spectrum. He doesn't want it. He wants softball questions thrown at him. He wants, and I don't know what Harris is going to do, but they're starting now already. It's only a couple of months into his presidency to say that Harris is the one that's talking to the foreign leaders. Harris is the one that's running foreign control, foreign affairs. Yeah.
Okay, so do you agree with this? Well, obviously, the agency explained that rapidly evolving technology and the rise of new media outlets, particularly cable and internet, had transformed how Americans obtain news and entertainment, rendering some of the ownership rules obsolete.
Absolutely.
It's a good sentence.
Absolutely. Who wrote that?
Well, this is Justice Kavanaugh. It's only a 9-page decision. It's very readable.
There's a new. I saw an advertisement on TV today. There's a new news organization that is going to be on cable channels, satellite channels, the internet. You're going to be able to look at it over the internet, free of charge. They're not going to charge you to watch it. Okay, but think about it.
Well, that's how they get you hooked in, though, Ed. Watch it.
The state of Connecticut used to, it still does, requires legal notices be published in the paper. Got it? And then the towns and the people that had to publish legal notices about a hearing or something like that were spending fortunes in money to the print media. And they said, wait a minute. We have a website now.
Yep.
Why can't we publish our legal notices on our website?
People check.
Or, yeah, and then it's up to the people to check the website. I mean, there's cases I know of right now that had the people checked on what was going on in their community, they would have known last year rather than this year. That's a real case that we can't talk about right now.
Right.
But what I'm saying is, the news media that doesn't give us news needs to go bye-bye.
So now this one, I don't know, maybe a little more controversial. So the FCC reasoned in getting rid of these rules that limited cross-ownership. The FCC reasoned that the historical justifications for those ownership rules no longer apply in today's media market, and that permitting efficient combinations among radio stations, television stations, and newspapers would benefit consumers. I'm not so sure about that. Doing away with restrictions on one entity owning a lot of the newspaper, radio, and television communications, that's going to make it more efficient and benefit consumers. That's the sentence I was talking about.
Let's say it doesn't.
Wait a second. That's the sentence I was talking about at the beginning of the show. To me, what that sentence is actually saying is everything is basically owned by companies that are all the same anyway, and they all say the same thing. So what difference does it make to have this like facade that within a single market, 2 or 3 companies are going to give different viewpoints or whatever, when they're all the same anyway? That's giving up on mainstream media. That sentence right there, to me, means mainstream media is over.
It is over.
Yeah.
It is absolutely over. When you, and I used to say this all the time, I mean, all of these old quotes are coming back to me. When the rumors coming out of town hall have more credibility than the facts coming from the news media that was given by the town hall, are, you know, when the rumors are more credible than the facts, we're all in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Because the government can just say whatever they want to the media and hold back a lot of information. And they're not going to know about it.
Right.
Okay?
Take a call?
Take a call?
Okay, let's take a call.
See if I can get this to work. Let's do it this way.
Why break tradition?
Summary judgment. Hello?
Hello, this is Joe out of Abilene, Texas.
Hi,
Hey,
Joe.
Joe out of
With the
Abilene,
granddaughter.
Texas.
Now, did you call last week, Joe?
I did.
Oh, okay. I
With
remember
the
you.
grandbaby.
Yep, you got your granddaughter there with you today?
Grandson, but no, he went to visit his mom and other grandparents.
Oh, Wade. I remember. Wade. Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
So did something we say make you want to call up and comment?
Well, yes and no. I just wanted to remind we the people that we are all newscasters. Anytime you film or say anything, that's we the people's rights. Being Fox News, they got a press pass, but Fox News provides it. There is no such thing as actual legal press pass. It just gives a separation from real newscasters and we the people. But in all actuality, we all are news.
I agree, and that's why in Southern California, the San Diego Police Department was giving out media credentials, and then when journalists would, like J.C. Playford, would show up at incidents, they would ask for a media credential, and for a time he had one, but then he didn't have one anymore, and so they would say that he was not equal to and couldn't cover the stories that the other media were covering, and that was totally illegal, totally against the Constitution, and our federal courts didn't do anything about it, and I don't know if San Diego is still doing that or not.
Well, and that's the downfall is it costs so much money to fight this through the legal terms, and it's kind of hard for the small people to jump up and override the big people.
Right. I mean, I loved it back in, what was it, January of 2017, Ed? We went on the website to Donald Trump's, maybe it was November, December, I don't know.
Down in New Jersey.
Yeah, and we applied for press passes. Me and Ed did through American News, and they were granted. And we went down there when he was interviewing people to be in his cabinet, and we were standing there with the national news organizations, and that was great that we were able to do that, and that's the way it should be.
Well, it should be, and I understand why they do it. However, I still think that we shouldn't have to have press, that we should be just we the people and say, hey, I'm representing the people. So what do you want to say to the people?
Well, I tell you what, if the George Floyd incident had not been video recorded by someone standing there,
There wouldn't be a trial.
There would not be a trial going on right now. There would not be.
No.
I agree.
There
And
would
that
be.
was press. That was news.
That it absolutely was.
And the gentleman filming this probably didn't even know his rights, knowing that he actually became a newscaster at that time.
Yeah, it changed the trajectory of a lot of things in America just by
Well,
that one video.
let me explain. One of the most famous privately shot videos in history was the Magruder tape of the Kennedy assassination. That was not shot by the mainstream media. That was shot by a private individual on his little 16 or 8 millimeter camera. You know, and I have always maintained that it's going to be the little guy. You know, you walk up to a scene and the police officer right away sees the size of your camera, and it's not a $100,000 camera, and he goes, "Sir, what's this?" I said, "Yeah, I'm the media." "Yeah, you're the media." And so I look at my camera, I said, "Can I ask you a question?" He says, "What?" I says, "Do you have penis envy?" I said, "Are you kidding?" I said, "No, you think that bigger is better?" I said, "Let me tell you something. I'll shoot more with this little camera than any one of those $100,000 cameras."
Yeah, but that's been a while since anybody really had that viewpoint.
But you got to understand.
Because even with national journalists now, you see them holding up their
But
phones.
in the 80s, was arguing to the government, law enforcement, said, it's not the size of the camera. It's, I'm here, and you don't expect me to be here because the media can't get here that fast.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm here, and now you're in trouble because, like in the Floyd case, they shot the film of him being killed, and if they didn't do it, the cops would have gone away.
So, Joe, you were going to say something?
Yeah, we're going to go back into, you know, 5 people really runs the whole media outlet, all through the United States wise. You know, so they're all pretty much one thing. You know, some a little bit better on outlooks than others, but when you mathematically figure it out, they all have the government interest in most parts. And it's getting to where it's ridiculous that you get more news from YouTube than you do from the news, Fox News and CNN and all them.
I think it's only a matter of time where the government finds a way to rein in the variety of opinion on YouTube and throughout the internet. They're going to have to, well, they're going to regulate it. I'll put it that way, because of exactly what you're saying. People are giving up on the mainstream, and they're getting their news from these other sites, and I don't think that is what the government and the people who run the mainstream news are going to allow for much longer.
Well, I don't have factual evidence, but the way I'm seeing this is there's government subsidies to the big people there, like YouTube, and our rights are getting restricted to free speech because of the cause and effect of the government. You know, so they're doing well, it's my company. However, they're getting subsidies, and so they're restricting certain people's freedom, and it goes with Facebook. Again, I don't have actual evidence to back that up, but there's a reason why they're starting to actually shut people up on Facebook and YouTube and all that. I don't even think the government has to involve itself. They always use outside forces to do their dirty work.
Yeah. Amen.
Yeah, and YouTube and Facebook are not government entities, so they can't violate your constitutional rights. So you can't sue them for First Amendment violations unless you find some connection, like you say, with the government, and you may not be able to. They may just be going along with it.
Well, it's kind of like the banking industry, with the rally they had at the Capitol. You know, they started getting information from the banks, but the banks didn't have to release it. The banks, all they had to do is just say, hey, you need a warrant. But, but the banks paid on the government side, and the people that, went to the rally or whatever, they're handing out, their personal effects to the government without a warrant because they just feel like they have all this authority to do so. You know, I got a bank meeting Monday. I'm gonna ask them if I bank with y'all. Are you gonna insist of a warrant to get my bank information?
It's a good
And
question.
if they say no, yep. Well,
Remember-
I mean, everything that the government has to do is going behind closed doors with private individuals, give people's freedoms, when everything has to consist of warrants. They got to have a warrant unless they get consent.
Yep, and a bank can consent.
I think the requirement of warrants is so trampled that we may never be able to get it back to an absolute strict rule of law that you got to have a warrant.
Yeah, the exceptions to the
Yeah.
Fourth Amendment have just overridden the actual Fourth Amendment protections. You are correct in that, Ed. No doubt about it.
Yep.
Yeah, well, of course, I'm a Constitution guy, so I'm not really a Democrat or Republican. I lean one side more than the other. But like the Supreme Court, you know, the Republican side is more for the government of like qualified immunity and all that kind of stuff.
True.
And they actually have little loopholes in the Constitution, which our founding father says, when they have that hole there, the government does not have that right, the people do. But they go and find that loophole, and then the government confiscates that loophole.
Mm-hmm.
And the Supreme Court says, yes, you can do this. When it actually,
That's a
our
good
founding father
reason.
says, no, that belongs to the people.
Well, I'd be interested to see what your bank says on Monday, because I had a case here in Connecticut, and you might remember that case, Ed, where the client definitely had another person, a government entity, go and get bank records. And that seemed to be illegal to me, without a warrant, without my client's position. At least here in Connecticut, there is no confidentiality or privilege in bank records. If a bank wanted to, they could give your records out to a neighbor, or at least here in Connecticut, there's no law preventing that. I don't know if other states have it or not, and there's no federal law that prevents it either. So I think a lot of people think their bank records are safe, and they may not be.
Yeah, and I think we go within also, like I said, a month or two ago, I don't remember, but we'll go back into contract, you know. So when I go to a bank, we're going to change this contract where if the government wants to see my records, they're going to issue a warrant, or we're going to have a verbal agreement, and then we're going to put it in writing that they're going to be, you know, some type of warrant.
Right. Right.
And it's not the simple fact I'm doing anything wrong. That's the simple fact. I want my Constitution upheld and my privacy secured from the government. I'll sign a contract with the bank within their guidelines, but the bank and the government is a separate entity, and I don't want them to intervene and get information without that warrant.
Yep. Some good thoughts, Joe. Thanks for calling up this week. And be sure to bring Wade next time.
And call in next week to let us know what the bank said.
I do want to know that, because I'm thinking the bank is going to look at him and think, what is this guy up to? Why does he want this stuff?
He's going to think Joe's got two heads.
Because it's just like when the police come to your house and you say, you know, I demand a warrant, then they're like, well, what are you hiding? Why can't we just come in? What's the harm if you're not doing anything wrong? You know, that's the old argument.
Well, in 1969, you know, the Supreme Court ruled that it's legal for them to lie.
Absolutely.
So, you know, they can lie to we the people as much as they want. It's up to we the people to say, nope, you know, and then you just call them out. I don't trust you, you know. It's legal for you to lie. You may not be lying, but it's legal for you to do so, so I don't trust you.
Yeah, but God forbid you lie to the police. That's a whole nother offense in and of itself. Especially if it's the feds.
Really? All right, listen.
Yeah.
Call us next week, Joe.
Have a good week, and
All right.
good luck tomorrow.
Have a good weekend.
Or Monday.
All right.
Bye. You know, yesterday being kind of a holiday. I think it was a federal holiday. I'm not even sure. It may have been
It was
state
a religious holiday.
Yeah, but what I mean is, you know, state or federal holiday. It seemed like a Saturday, so I got mixed up and thought tomorrow was Monday, but we have an extra day.
We do. How much time? Wind it up?
Oh, wind it up. Perfect.
Wind it up.
Okay, we'll see you next week.
And we'll have some topics.
Good job, Ed.